Welcome to Strides to Solutions. I'm Esther Adams. Today, we're exploring the intersection of clinical psychology, neuroscience, and real world application through one of humanity's most powerful yet underutilized medicines, laughter. If you've ever noticed that you feel physically different after a good laugh, if you've ever wondered why comedy exists in every culture on earth, or if you've intuited that there's something healing about humor, even when life feels unbearable, you're about to discover that your instincts are backed by remarkable science. We're going to journey from a hospital room in 1964, where a man with a supposedly incurable disease laughed his way to recovery through cutting edge research on how humor literally changes our biology, to practical strategies you can use today to harness what might be the most accessible and enjoyable therapy available to humans. In 1964, a man named Norman Cousins checked himself into a hospital with pain so severe it felt like his entire body was on fire. After a battery of tests, doctors delivered devastating news. He had ankylosing spondylitis, a rare disease causing progressive deterioration of the body's connective tissue. His chances of recovery? 1 in 500. Most people would have accepted this prognosis as a death sentence, but Cousins was not most people. He was a journalist, and journalists ask questions. The question that occurred to him was both simple and revolutionary. If negative emotions like guilt, worry, and anxiety are correlated with disease, and the research suggested they were, could positive emotions promote healing? It was an audacious thought, especially in an era when the mind and body were still largely considered separate entities in medical thinking. But with odds of survival at 0.2%, Cousins figured he had nothing to lose. What he did next would have seemed like madness to most medical professionals of his time. With the support of his personal physician, itself a minor miracle, Cousins checked out of the hospital and into a nearby hotel. He didn't bring medical equipment or exotic treatments. He brought movies. Specifically, he brought Marx Brothers films, Laurel and Hardy classics, and episodes of Candid Camera that his friend Alan Funt sent him. His treatment protocol? Laughter. Intense, sustained, belly-aching laughter. The results defied medical explanation. Cousins discovered that 10 minutes of genuine laughter gave him 2 hours of pain-free sleep, no small feat for someone whose connective tissue was supposedly disintegrating. But even more remarkably, his blood tests began showing improvement. The sedimentation rate, a marker of inflammation and infection, started dropping. Not dramatically at first, maybe 5 points here and there, but consistently, cumulatively, his disease began going into remission. When Cousins wrote up his experience for the New England Journal of Medicine, the medical establishment was skeptical, to put it mildly. How could watching Groucho Marx wiggle his eyebrows possibly affect a serious autoimmune condition? The answer to that question would take decades to fully understand, and would ultimately give birth to an entirely new field of study, psychoneuroimmunology, the science of how thoughts and emotions affect our immune system. What we now know is that Cousins wasn't just lucky, and he wasn't experiencing a placebo effect in the traditional sense. He had stumbled onto something fundamental about how human biology works. When we laugh, really laugh, not just polite chuckling, our bodies undergo a cascade of physiological changes that would make any pharmaceutical company envious. The brain releases a cocktail of neurochemicals, including endorphins, which are literally endogenous morphine, our body's own painkillers. The immune system kicks into high gear, producing more natural killer cells, T cells, and immunoglobulins. Even our genes respond, with research showing that laughter can affect the expression of genes related to immune function and stress response. But to understand why laughter has such profound effects, we need to understand what humor actually is from both evolutionary and psychological perspectives. And this is where things get interesting because humor, it turns out, is far more complex than just finding things funny. From an evolutionary standpoint, laughter appears to be ancient. All great apes laugh, or at least produce laugh like vocalizations during play. This suggests that laughter evolved at least 10 to 16 million years ago before the human lineage split from other apes. But why would evolution preserve and refine something as seemingly frivolous as laughter? The answer might be that laughter was never frivolous at all. It was essential for survival. Laughter appears to have evolved as a social signal that a seemingly threatening situation is actually safe. When our ancestors saw another member of their group laugh after a startling event, it signaled false alarm, no real danger here. This would have been crucial for group cohesion and stress management in small bands of early humans who needed to stay alert to real threats without exhausting themselves responding to false ones. The person who could laugh, who could quickly shift from stress response to relaxation, would have had a survival advantage. This evolutionary heritage explains why humor and laughter are universal across human cultures. From the ancient Greeks who considered humor a virtue that nurtured the soul, to indigenous peoples around the world who incorporated laughter into healing rituals, every culture has recognized something medicinal about mirth. Even in the darkest circumstances, perhaps especially in the darkest circumstances, humans have turned to humor as a survival mechanism. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, wrote about how humor helped prisoners survive in concentration camps. Humor was another of the soul's weapons in the fight for self preservation, he observed. Even facing systematic dehumanization and death, people found ways to laugh, not because anything was genuinely funny in a conventional sense, but because laughter represented a form of resistance, a declaration that the human spirit could not be entirely crushed. But not all humor is created equal, and this is crucial to understand if we're going to use humor therapeutically. The type of humor matters enormously. Parody, for instance, the ability to gently mock situations, or even ourselves, appears to be one of the most therapeutic forms of humor. When we can parody our own struggles, we create psychological distance from them. We shift from being trapped inside the problem to being an observer who can see its absurd dimensions. Consider the different impact of various humor styles. Slapstick comedy, the pie in the face, the slipping on banana peels, works through a kind of cathartic release. We laugh at physical mishaps that could happen to us, releasing tension about our own vulnerability. Absurdist humor, like Gary Larson's Far Side cartoons, with their cows driving cars and sharks wearing glasses, works by breaking our normal patterns of thinking. It forces our brains out of their usual grooves, which can be therapeutic when those grooves have become ruts of rumination and worry. Black humor, jokes about death and dying, serves a particularly important psychological function. It allows us to approach our deepest fear, mortality, in a way that makes it momentarily manageable. Emergency room doctors, paramedics, soldiers, people who deal with death regularly, often develop pronounced black humor. It's not callousness, it's psychological survival. By finding something to laugh about in the face of death, they maintain their ability to function in situations that would psychologically destroy most people. But then there's sarcasm, and here we need to sound a note of caution. The word sarcasm comes from Greek words meaning to tear flesh, and that's essentially what sarcastic humor does psychologically. While the person delivering sarcasm might feel a momentary sense of superiority or release, the recipient experiences stress. Their cortisol levels rise, their immune function is suppressed, their psychological defenses are activated. Sarcasm doesn't relieve stress, it transfers it from one person to another, often with interest. This distinction between helpful and harmful humor relates to the various theories psychologists have developed to explain why we laugh. The superiority theory, dating back to Plato, suggests we laugh when we feel superior to others. This might explain why we laugh at pratfalls and mistakes. There's a moment of thank God that's not me. But while this type of laughter might provide temporary ego boost, it doesn't create the deep healing that comes from more connective forms of humor. The incongruity theory offers a different explanation. We laugh when two incompatible ideas come together in unexpected ways. This is the basis of much wordplay and absurdist humor. Our brains are prediction machines, constantly anticipating what comes next. When something violates those predictions in a non threatening way, laughter results. This type of humor can be therapeutic because it literally changes our neural patterns, breaking us out of rigid thinking. Freud's release theory suggested that laughter is a way of releasing psychological tension, particularly around taboo topics like sex and death. While Freud got many things wrong, there's something to this idea. Laughter does provide a physical release. Muscles contract and then relax. Breathing changes. Neurochemicals are released. It's like a reset button for our nervous system. But perhaps the most profound theory is what some call the divinity theory, the idea that humor connects us to something larger than ourselves. Laughter is inherently social. We laugh 30 times more often when we're with others than when alone. In moments of shared laughter, boundaries dissolve. The things that separate us, status, age, culture, temporarily disappear. We become, for that moment, simply humans experiencing joy together. This connective quality of humor might explain some of its most powerful therapeutic effects. When researchers measure what happens in the body during laughter, they find changes that go far beyond simple stress relief. Dr. Lee Burke's research at Loma Linda University found that laughter decreases stress hormones like cortisol and epinephrine while increasing immune function markers. But more remarkably, these effects last. An hour of watching a comedy show can boost immune function for up to 12 hours. The cardiovascular effects are equally impressive. While laughing, heart rate and blood pressure temporarily increase, similar to moderate exercise. Some researchers call laughter internal jogging. But afterward, both heart rate and blood pressure drop below baseline levels. People who laugh regularly have lower resting blood pressure and reduced risk of heart disease. The old saying, laughter is the best medicine, turns out to be more than folk wisdom. Even more intriguing is what Dr. William Fry discovered about tears. Tears produced from laughter have a different chemical composition than tears from sadness or those produced by cutting onions. Emotional tears, both from laughter and crying, contain more proteins and toxins, suggesting they serve to literally remove stress related chemicals from the body. As Kurt Vonnegut quipped, laughter and tears are both responses to frustration and exhaustion. I myself prefer to laugh since there is less cleaning up to do afterward. The neurological effects of laughter are particularly fascinating. Brain imaging studies show that humor processing involves multiple brain regions working in concert. The left hemisphere sets up the joke, processing the language and logic. The right hemisphere gets the joke, detecting the incongruity. The limbic system, our emotional center, generates the feeling of mirth. And the motor cortex produces the physical act of laughter. It's a whole brain workout that enhances neural connectivity and cognitive flexibility. This might explain why regular laughter seems to have protective effects against cognitive decline. A study in Japan found that elderly people who laughed daily had significantly lower rates of cognitive impairment than those who rarely laughed. Laughter appears to be neuroprotective, possibly by reducing inflammation in the brain and promoting the growth of new neural connections. The endorphins released during laughter don't just kill pain, they enhance mood and create a sense of well being that can last for hours. But laughter triggers release of other beneficial neurochemicals too. Serotonin, the neurotransmitter targeted by many antidepressants, increases with laughter. Dopamine, associated with pleasure and reward, spikes during humorous experiences. Oxytocin, the bonding hormone, is released during shared laughter, strengthening social connections. These neurochemical changes might explain why humor therapy has proven effective in treating depression. It's not that depressed people just need to cheer up, a harmful oversimplification, but rather that regular, genuine laughter can help rebalance the brain chemistry that depression disrupts. Of course, Humor therapy isn't a replacement for professional treatment of clinical depression, but it can be a valuable complementary approach. The immune system effects of laughter are perhaps the most extensively studied. Dr. Lee Burke's research found that laughter increases production of antibodies and activates protective cells like T cells and natural killer cells. These are the cells that identify and destroy viruses and cancer cells. In one study, cancer patients who watched humorous videos showed increased natural killer cell activity compared to those who didn't. But here's where it gets really interesting. The effects aren't just temporary. Regular laughter appears to create lasting changes in immune function. People who laugh frequently have higher baseline levels of immunoglobulin A, an antibody that's our first line of defense against respiratory infections. They get sick less often, and when they do get sick, they recover faster. The mechanism seems to involve the stress response system. Chronic stress suppresses immune function by keeping cortisol levels elevated. Laughter breaks this pattern, providing regular resets that prevent the immune suppression associated with chronic stress. It's like giving your immune system regular vacation days to recover and strengthen. Even wound healing is affected by laughter. In studies where patients watched comedy videos, their wounds healed faster than control groups. The mechanism likely involves both improved immune function and better blood flow. Laughter improves circulation, delivering more oxygen and nutrients to healing tissues. The pain relieving effects of laughter that Norman Cousins discovered have been validated in numerous studies. Laughter triggers endorphin release, but it also seems to work through distraction and cognitive shift. When we're laughing, our attention shifts away from pain signals. But more than that, laughter changes our relationship to pain. It becomes something we're observing rather than something that's consuming us. This has led to the use of humor therapy in various medical settings. Many cancer wards now have humor carts, stocked with funny books, comedy DVDs, and even rubber chickens and other props. The University of California, Los Angeles has a RX Laughter program studying how humor helps children deal with serious illnesses. Clown doctors, trained performers who work in pediatric wards, have become common in many hospitals. The results can be remarkable. Children who interact with clown doctors require less pain medication, cooperate better with treatments, and show faster recovery times. It's not just distraction, these children show measurable improvements in immune function and stress hormone levels. The laughter is literally helping them heal. But you don't need to be in a hospital to benefit from humor therapy. The question is, how can we intentionally cultivate more therapeutic laughter in our daily lives? This is where the practical application becomes crucial, because knowing that laughter is healthy isn't enough. We need strategies to actually increase it. The first and perhaps most important step is permission. Many of us, somewhere along the line, internalize the message that laughter is frivolous, immature, or inappropriate. We were told to wipe that smile off your face or act your age. We learned that serious people don't laugh too much, that professional means poker faced. This conditioning runs deep, and breaking it requires conscious effort. I often recommend that people start by simply observing their own patterns. How often do you genuinely laugh in a day? Not polite chuckles or social smiles, but real, genuine laughter. Research suggests we should be hitting about 15 genuine laughs per day for optimal health benefits, but many adults fall far short. Children, by contrast, laugh an average of 300 times per day. What happens between childhood and adulthood that causes such a dramatic decrease? Part of it is certainly increased responsibility and awareness of life's genuine difficulties, but much of it is learned suppression. We train ourselves out of finding things funny. We develop what I call terminal seriousness, the belief that being a responsible adult means rarely laughing. This is not only unnecessary, but actively harmful to our health. One practical strategy is to implement what I call humor appointments, scheduled times for engaging with comedy. This might sound forced, but it works. Just as we schedule exercise or meals, we can schedule laughter. Watch a comedy special during lunch. Listen to a humorous podcast during your commute. Read a funny book before bed instead of checking anxiety inducing news. The development of a humor library is another practical strategy. This is a collection of resources that reliably make you laugh. Everyone's library will be different. What's hilarious to one person might fall flat for another. The key is to pay attention to what genuinely amuses you and collect it. Save funny videos, bookmark humorous websites, keep comedy albums on your phone. When you need a laugh, you'll have resources ready. But perhaps the most powerful humor intervention is learning to find humor in your own life. This doesn't mean making light of genuine suffering or using humor to avoid dealing with real problems. It means developing what I call comic vision, the ability to see the absurd, ironic, or genuinely funny aspects of daily experience. This requires a shift in attention. Instead of scanning for threats, problems, and irritations, which our brains are evolutionarily primed to do, we consciously look for incongruities, ironies, and amusing moments. The person who cuts you off in traffic while sporting a practice random acts of kindness bumper sticker, the autocorrect that turns your professional email into inadvertent comedy, the dog who looks exactly like its owner. Self parody is particularly powerful as a stress management tool. When we can laugh at ourselves, not in a self deprecating, self esteem destroying way, but with genuine affection for our own humanity, we become less vulnerable to stress. The things that would normally trigger anger or anxiety become material for gentle self amusement. I worked with a client who was constantly stressed about being late. He would spiral into anxiety and self recrimination every time he was running behind. We worked on developing a humorous persona for his late running self, Captain Tardiness, striking again. Instead of harsh self criticism, he learned to gently parody his own tendency. The behavior didn't change overnight, but his relationship to it transformed. The stress dissipated, and ironically, without the anxiety spiral, he actually started being on time more often. The social dimension of humor is crucial to consider. While we can laugh alone, laughter is fundamentally social. We're 30 times more likely to laugh when we're with others. This isn't just about having an audience, it's about connection. Shared laughter creates bonds, releases oxytocin, and provides social support, all crucial factors in stress resilience. Building what I call a humor network, people who make you laugh and with whom you can share laughter, is as important for health as having a good doctor. These are the people you call when you need a lift, who send you funny messages, who can find humor even in difficult situations. Cultivating these relationships is an investment in your health. But there's an important caveat about social humor: it should connect, not divide. Humor that targets, excludes, or demeans others might produce laughter, but it doesn't produce the healing effects we're discussing. In fact, mean spirited humor increases stress in both the target and ultimately the perpetrator. True therapeutic humor is inclusive, connecting us through our shared humanity rather than dividing us through mockery. The timing of humor matters too. There are absolutely times when laughter is inappropriate, when it would minimize genuine suffering or prevent necessary emotional processing. The death of a loved one, a serious diagnosis, a major loss, these experiences need to be felt and processed, not laughed away. But even in these situations, humor often naturally emerges as part of healing. The funny stories shared at funerals, the dark jokes that emerge in cancer wards, the absurdist humor that bubbles up in crisis. These represent not denial, but integration, ways of holding both the tragic and comic aspects of human existence. Professional comedians offer interesting insights into the therapeutic use of humor. Many comedians come from difficult backgrounds, broken homes, trauma, addiction in the family. Comedy became their survival mechanism, a way to process pain and connect with others. But there's a shadow side too. When humor becomes the only coping mechanism, when it's used to avoid rather than process emotion, it can become its own problem. Gilda Radner wrote insightfully about this in her autobiography. Comedy is very controlling. You are making people laugh. You feel completely in control when you hear a wave of laughter coming back that you have caused. Probably that's why people in comedy can be so neurotic and have so many problems. Sometimes we talk about it as a need to be loved, but I think that with me, it was also a need to control. This points to an important principle. Humor should be one tool in our coping toolkit, not the only one. It should complement, not replace, other forms of emotional processing and stress management. Someone who can only relate to life through jokes might be avoiding necessary emotional work. Balance is key. The cultural dimensions of humor also deserve consideration. Different cultures have vastly different relationships with humor. What's considered funny, when it's appropriate to laugh, who can joke with whom, these are all culturally determined. In therapeutic settings, it's crucial to be sensitive to these differences. Forcing humor on someone from a culture where emotional restraint is valued could increase rather than decrease stress. That said, every culture has humor. It might manifest differently, dry British wit versus American slapstick versus Japanese wordplay, but the capacity for laughter is universal. This suggests that humor meets a fundamental human need that transcends cultural boundaries. Age related changes in humor are worth noting too. As we age, what we find funny often shifts. The physical comedy that delights children might not amuse adults. The edgy humor of adolescence might seem tiresome in middle age. But interestingly, many elderly people report a return to simple, playful humor. Perhaps with the accumulated perspective of years, they can better appreciate life's absurdities. Research on successful aging consistently finds that maintaining a sense of humor is associated with better health outcomes, higher life satisfaction, and even longer life. Centenarians, when asked about their secrets to longevity, frequently cite laughter and not taking life too seriously. This isn't just anecdotal. Studies show that people with a strong sense of humor have lower rates of cardiovascular disease, better immune function, and greater resilience to stress across the lifespan. The workplace is another domain where humor can be powerfully therapeutic or problematic. Appropriate workplace humor can reduce stress, increase creativity, improve team cohesion, and even boost productivity. Companies like Google and Zappos have built humor into their corporate cultures with play areas, funny traditions, and encouragement of appropriate joking. But workplace humor can also go wrong. Humor that targets individuals, reinforces hierarchies, or crosses boundaries can create hostile work environments. The key is humor that includes rather than excludes, that humanizes rather than demeans. Self deprecating humor from leaders can be particularly effective, showing vulnerability and humanity that makes them more relatable and trustworthy. The role of humor in education is equally important. Teachers who appropriately use humor report better student engagement, improved retention of material, and reduced classroom stress. Students learn better when they're enjoying themselves. The brain is more receptive to new information when it's in a positive emotional state. But again, the humor must be inclusive and appropriate. Sarcasm directed at students is harmful, not helpful. In therapeutic settings, humor requires particular sensitivity. Therapists who can appropriately use humor report that it can help build rapport, reduce client anxiety, and facilitate breakthrough moments. But timing is everything. Humor introduced too early can seem dismissive of real suffering. Humor that comes from the client, however, often signals important psychological shifts, the ability to gain perspective on their situation. The digital age has transformed how we experience and share humor. Memes, funny videos, comedy podcasts, we have unprecedented access to humor. But this also means we can become passive consumers rather than active participants. Watching comedy is good, but creating and sharing humor, even bad puns or silly observations, engages different neural pathways and provides different benefits. Social media has created new forms of humor and new ways of connecting through laughter, but it's also created new problems. Online humor can quickly turn cruel, with people saying things behind screen names they'd never say face to face. The pile on effect of social media can transform what might have been momentary embarrassment into lasting trauma. We need to be thoughtful about how we use humor online. The question of humor in times of collective crisis, pandemics, wars, natural disasters, is particularly relevant. Historically, humor has always emerged in these times. During the Black Death, people told plague jokes. During the London Blitz, British humor became a form of resistance. During COVID-19, the internet exploded with pandemic memes. This isn't insensitivity, it's psychological survival, a way of maintaining sanity in insane circumstances. But there's a balance. Humor about shared suffering can connect and heal. Humor that minimizes others' pain or makes light of genuine tragedy can harm. The key is punching up, not down, making fun of the situation or those in power, not those who are suffering. As we consider implementing more therapeutic humor in our lives, it's important to recognize individual differences. Some people are naturally more inclined toward humor than others. This isn't a character flaw or something that needs fixing. Forcing someone who's naturally serious to become a comedian isn't helpful, but everyone can benefit from finding their own way to incorporate more lightness into life. For some, this might mean watching comedy. For others, it might mean playing with children or pets. Some might find humor in wordplay or puns, others in physical comedy or absurdist art. The key is finding what genuinely brings you joy and making space for it in your life. It's also worth considering the role of playfulness, which is related to but distinct from humor. Play is about engaging with life in a non serious way, being willing to be silly, to experiment, to fail without consequence. Adults often lose the capacity for play, seeing it as childish. But play is how we learn, how we connect, how we innovate. Reclaiming playfulness, even without explicit humor, can have similar stress reducing, health promoting effects. The timing of humor throughout the day matters too. Starting the day with something funny, a comic strip, a humorous podcast, a silly interaction with a pet, sets a different tone than starting with news or work emails. Similarly, ending the day with humor rather than worry can improve sleep quality. Our brains consolidate the emotional tone of our last waking hours during sleep. Creating humor rituals can be powerful. Maybe it's a weekly comedy night with friends, a daily exchange of jokes with a colleague, or a family tradition of sharing the funniest thing that happened each day at dinner. These rituals create predictable moments of lightness to counterbalance life's inevitable stresses. It's important to distinguish between healthy and unhealthy uses of humor. Healthy humor brings people together, provides perspective, releases tension, and ultimately helps us process and integrate difficult experiences. Unhealthy humor divides, avoids, attacks, or enables dysfunction. If humor is being used to avoid dealing with serious problems, to hurt others, or to maintain unhealthy patterns, it's not therapeutic. The question of whether we can actually change our sense of humor is interesting. Research suggests that while we might have innate tendencies, some people are naturally more playful or quick to laugh, sense of humor can definitely be developed. Like any skill, it improves with practice. People who consciously work on finding humor in daily life report that it becomes easier over time. Neural pathways strengthen, and the brain becomes more adept at detecting potential humor. This neuroplasticity extends to recovery from trauma and depression. People who've experienced significant trauma often report losing their ability to laugh, feeling like humor has been extinguished. But with time and intentional practice, the capacity for laughter can return. It might feel forced at first, but gradually, genuine mirth reemerges. This return of laughter is often a significant milestone in recovery. The role of humor in meaning making deserves attention. Viktor Frankl observed that humor helped concentration camp prisoners maintain some sense of meaning and humanity in meaningless, inhumane conditions. Humor can help us reframe experiences, finding significance or at least bearable absurdity in what might otherwise be overwhelming. This doesn't mean finding humor in genuine tragedy, but rather finding moments of lightness even in dark times. The jokes shared in hospital waiting rooms, the laughter at wakes, the humor that emerges in support groups. These represent not denial, but integration, ways of holding the full spectrum of human experience. As we think about building resilience for future stresses, developing our capacity for humor is like strengthening a muscle. The more we practice finding humor in small daily stresses, the more available this coping mechanism becomes for larger challenges. It's not about laughing away serious problems, but about maintaining access to lightness even when things are heavy. The dosage matters too. While the often cited 15 laughs a day provides a target, quality matters as much as quantity. One deep, genuine belly laugh might be worth 10 polite chuckles, and individual needs vary. Some people need more humor, others less. The key is paying attention to your own patterns and needs. It's worth noting that fake laughter can have some benefits too. The physical act of laughing, even forced, triggers some of the same physiological responses as genuine laughter. Laughter yoga, where people gather to engage in intentional laughter exercises, has shown measurable health benefits, even though the laughter starts out artificial. Often, fake laughter transforms into real laughter, especially in group settings. But genuine mirth, arising from actually finding something funny, seems to have the most profound effects. This genuine laughter involves not just the physical act, but the cognitive and emotional experience of humor. It's this full experience that triggers the complete cascade of beneficial physiological changes. As we consider the future of humor therapy, technology offers interesting possibilities. Virtual reality comedy experiences, AI generated personalized humor, apps that remind us to laugh. These might sound dystopian to some, but they could make therapeutic humor more accessible. The key will be maintaining the human, connective aspects of humor while leveraging technology's reach. The integration of humor therapy with other therapeutic modalities is also promising. Combining humor with mindfulness, with cognitive behavioral therapy, with somatic therapies, these integrated approaches might be more powerful than any single intervention. Humor could be the spoonful of sugar that helps the therapeutic medicine go down.